Picture this. Your partner's trying to turn the AC on in the front room. They're saying it the same way they've said everything else their entire life. They'll live their whole life with that voice, and the smart speaker just doesn't hear them. Not, I didn't catch that, can you repeat? It just outright ignores them. Or worse, it hears the wrong thing and turns the TV off. They try once more, then they sigh and give up and just hit the button on the unit the way they used to before any of this kit was in the house.
Oh, for goodness sake, I'll do it myself, shall I?
If you've ever made someone you live with feel like the house doesn't recognise them, then this video is for you. If you're the smart home enthusiast in the house, then you're making a mistake thinking that everybody else cares about the same things as you. They probably never did. They cared about being heard in their own front room. They cared about not finding the lights confusing to use. They cared about things working reliably in the way that they expect them to. So today we're going to talk about how to actually get the people you live with on board with your smart home. Not by selling them on it harder, but by building it for them. So, go grab a coffee, I'll get one too, and then we'll get into it. If you spend any time on the Home Assistant forums or r/smart home or any of the smart home subreddits, you'll see variations of the same thread reposted every couple of weeks. Different usernames, same complaint. There's one on the Home Assistant community forum where the post opens with, and I quote, "Just received a solid 15 to 20 minute lecture from my partner about how my smart home obsession is making things more complicated for her." The pattern's striking once you start seeing it. It's overwhelmingly men complaining. My partner won't let me. It'd be a rich conversation if more women felt they could weigh in. I honestly don't know if there are hardly any women in this hobby, if the data disguises women as men like it does on YouTube, if they actually don't feel safe speaking out, or some unpleasant combination of all of the above. Even the acronym itself was WAF, Wife Approval Factor. It's largely fallen out of favour in mainstream smart home discussions now, thank God, because it assumes the smart home enthusiast is a man and the partner is a woman, and it's not very inclusive language, and I think we're better than that. But the language is the easy bit. The hard bit is the underlying behaviour. Treating someone you live with as an obstacle you have to manage around is the actual problem. It's not a marketing problem, it's not a sales problem, it's a you built the wrong thing problem. When your partner complains that they don't want any more smart kit in the house, they're not being a Luddite. They're not failing to appreciate your vision, they're telling you something true. They're telling you that whatever you've built so far has cost them more than it's given them. Resistance is information, it's feedback, treat it that way. If you only take one thing from this video, take the framing flip. Stop pitching the smart home from your side and start building it from theirs. Show the people you live with how it makes their lives easier, not just yours.
It's not about you.
That's what the rest of this video is. I've set up 4 scenarios covering the people you might be sharing your house with and trying to help you solve their problems. Probably the most universal scenario is somebody you live with who works long hours. Maybe they do shift work, maybe they have a punishing commute, maybe it's just a job that drains them. Either way, they come home knackered, and the last thing they want is to learn a new app, troubleshoot a routine, or hear about your new dashboard, sorry. The enthusiast trap is to sit them down and walk them through how it all works together. Believe me, I know I've been guilty of it myself, but you've just handed them homework. They don't care how it works, they care whether or not it works for them. What they actually need is for the house to take stuff off their plate, without having to ask, without them having to think about it. So, what does that look like in practice? It looks like floors that get done while they're out, not I'll run the vacuum after dinner, just done. It looks like a bedroom being warm before they get home, not after they've shivered through getting changed. It looks like a landing light that comes on when they go up the stairs at 11:30 on the right brightness without having to fumble for a switch in the dark. This is where I think a robot vacuum cleaner really earns its keep. I've had a Roborock for over 3 years now, but I bloody love it. Mine's an older model, it's an S7 Max Ultra, but the current smart vacuum cleaner range is, in my opinion, the strongest case I can make for smart home products that actively makes a busy person's life easier. You schedule it once, it cleans while you're out. You come home, the floors are done. That's it. Once you've properly got it set up, you rarely even need to check the app. It's just one less thing to worry about. I'll put a couple of models in the description. A flagship one that can even maintain itself if you've got the budget, and a cheaper but still really good one if you haven't. If you buy through the links, I'll get a few quid in. No extra cost to you, and I'll be really grateful. I should point out though, I've only used the Roborock S7 Ultra. My recommendations come directly from people I trust, so I still feel like these are all good calls. The principle for the busy partner scenario is this. They shouldn't have to know the smart home exists. They should just notice the thing it takes off their hand. I find it really odd that accessibility is almost never talked about in the smart home world, yet the smart home industry is one of the few places where consumer tech is just straight up amazing for accessibility and almost nobody pitches it that way. I try not to use the phrase life-changing too often, but for disabled people, it applies. A well-considered smart home can literally change their lives. Accessibility is a broad church. It can include mobility, motor function, vision, hearing. These are all different needs with different fits, but what works in practice keeps coming back to the same shape. Physical buttons, audio confirmations, and visual cues. Same stuff, repurposed for the needs of whoever's living with it. Take someone who struggles with traditional rocker switches. Someone who'd struggle to get up and flip a light switch. The standard smart answer is voice control. And voice is fine, but it's not the whole answer. It can fail when there's background noise, when the speaker can't hear, when the wake word doesn't trigger. The user also has to know the correct commands to give. Turn off the lights is fine when the smart home speaker is room aware and the user intends every light in the room to come on. But if they just want a specific light to come on, or if the smart speaker's not set up to be room aware, then voice can actually be a very frustrating experience. What I found really useful is large button physical scene controllers. I use a bunch of buttons from various manufacturers. All of them are battery powered, so you can stick them anywhere. Beside the bed, on the sofa arm, on a wheelchair tray. You don't need a phone for them to work. Set them up in Home Assistant or whatever system you use, and they just work. Press button 1 to turn on the lights. Press button 2 to turn the telly on. Press button 3 to turn the heating on to the preset temperature. Press button 4 to turn everything off again. It doesn't get much easier than that. Many of them are even big enough that you can label them, which makes it easier still. Lights on motion in bathrooms and hallways at night is enormous for mobility too. Fumbling for a switch in the dark is when falls can happen. I actually said I didn't really see the point of bathroom motion-based lighting in a recent video, but I got thoroughly schooled on this one, and I will admit, I didn't consider it from an accessibility point of view. I will say though, I advise against using a PIR sensor here and instead opt for a millimeter wave presence sensor. PIR sensors are not great at detecting small movements, so unless you want to be flailing around on the toilet or in the bath, the much more sensitive millimeter wave sensor will be a much better fit here. For someone with low vision, smart speakers are utterly transformative. Voice as the primary interface does actually make sense here. Audio confirmations on state changes so the feedback isn't visual. The house can tell you front door locked or heating is on out loud. Also physical buttons that are tactilely distinguishable, ideally different shapes or with raised markers, not just identical squares. As oddly shaped switches are not commonly available, you can get around this issue by using braille stickers which you just pop on the button. Or if you're feeling fancy, you could 3D print your own unique buttons. I'll stick a link to the braille stickers down below. For someone with hearing loss, it's the other way around. Visual notifications instead of auditory ones. The doorbell triggers a light flash. The dishwasher finishing turns a bulb green, which then changes back to the regular colour once a door sensor detects you open the door. The kit is the same kit, it's the framing that's different. A bulb that changes colour when the dishwasher's done is a gimmick if you can hear the dishwasher beep. It's a real assistive device if you can't. The takeaway is that an accessibility-friendly smart home isn't a different product range. It's the same products framed for the right need. If you live with somebody whose needs sit anywhere on that spectrum, you've got a much stronger case for this house is for you than the average enthusiast realises. I'm ADHD. That's autism plus ADHD. I got into smart homes because they were cool and fun, but it really didn't take long for me to see how valuable it was to help me simply function on a day-to-day basis. It was, for me, an executive function prosthetic, a working memory prosthetic, and I don't have to remember to do this anymore machine. Even though I personally believe ADHD to be a distinct thing in its own right, this isn't a Neurodivergent channel, so I'll just treat them as two separate things here, because ADHD and autism have different and often opposite needs, and the smart home helps each need differently. The ADHD bit for me is about stuff that falls out of my head. I walk into a room with a clear intention and then forget what it was by the time I'm standing in the middle of it. I wake up in the middle of the night and suddenly remember that the bins are being collected in a few hours. Or sometimes I wake up because I literally hear the bin room. I lose my phone constantly. I wrote the script weeks before I actually filmed it, but I can almost guarantee that I lost it at least once at some point during this week. Now you might be thinking, yeah, that happens to me, but this happens to me regularly, like daily. What helps with that is the smart home doing the remembering for me. A routine that fires every Tuesday at 9 PM and pings me about which bins need to be put out, doesn't care that I forgot the bins existed for 6 days. A reminder notification or a bulb that turns green when the washing machine is done and stays that way until I empty it means never again do I have to think, did I put the wash on? A one button leaving the house routine collapses the whole leaving the house decision tree to one press. Lights turn off all the AC units, check that the windows are all closed. Done. And critically, no phone dependency. If I have to have my phone on me to operate my smart home, then that massively increases the chance I'll get annoyed with it. Because I know my phone is somewhere in the house, but I currently don't know where. The smart home cannot require the phone as the only interface, because some days the phone isn't where I am. Physical buttons are the difference between the system being usable and being in the bin. The autism bit is different. It's more about predictability and sensory stuff for me in that regard. So like keeping things simple to operate with a single button press, and actions and notifications that are not loud and obnoxious are the two main things where I found it to be helpful. I also really like having mood lighting in my room, as I really dislike bright lights. I'd actually love to do some more autism friendly automations, but kinda can't think of any. If you have some, please drop them in the comments or tell me about it on our Discord server. I am all ears.
I'm literally one giant ear.
A flashy demo-friendly setup with adaptive everything and workwear voice control as the primary input can actually be harder to live in than the boring, predictable, button-driven version. So if you're neurodivergent or you live with someone who is, the takeaway for this section is that consistent and button-first wins. Every time. The constraint for this household isn't time, attention, or even sensory load. It's logistics. There are more people in the house, the schedule's tighter, and the consequences of small things going wrong are higher, because the small things involve children, who are in themselves also small things. The enthusiast pitch here usually sounds like, wait till you see the dashboard for the kids' room. Don't get me wrong, dashboards are actually really cool, and they actually can be helpful in some scenarios, like a family calendar would probably actually be really useful, but it's probably not the panacea that you think it is. The actual need is more like, I'd like to know if the kids left the front door open when they left for school, and I'd like a water leak sensor in the bathroom as my son has left the sink running on more than one occasion. There are two big themes: safety and routines. Safety is where simple, cheap and locally controllable sensors really earn their place every single time. Door and window sensors so you know when the front door's been left open or the back gate's swinging. Water leak sensors under the washing machine, dishwasher and the sinks. A flooded utility room with 2 kids in tow is a bad day. A leak sensor that pings your phone the moment something's wet is a tenner of insurance against an afternoon of wringing out towels or the potential expense of replacing a ruined floor. Location tracking can also be supremely useful here, not just for automations, although geofencing is really cool, but for safety and convenience. You'll feel more comfortable knowing where your child is when they play out in an evening. The kids still play out in an evening, I was actually the 80s.
Yeah, the 80s were awesome.
It can also be useful to know when your partner's coming back from the school run so you can have the dinner ready. Not everybody's comfortable effectively low-jacking their kids, so this may not be for everyone, but for those who want to, it's a damn useful thing. Then there's the routines. A bedtime sequence that dims the kids' rooms gently rather than yanking the lights off all at once. A nightlight on motion at low brightness so they can find the loo during the night without waking up properly. A sunrise wake up that's gentler than a blaring alarm, or mum throwing the curtains open and yelling, "Right, out of bed, it's time for school!" The Repinic dimmer switches I reviewed last week would actually be perfect for this, as they've got those routines built into them. Link in the description. The framing for this bit is calm. A smart home for a family with kids should feel like the house is helping run the household, not just that the nightmare is captured on a fancy dashboard. If your partner has to manage the smart home, in addition to managing the kids, you've added work. If the smart home handles the logistics for them, then you're onto a winner. So what's the point? We can't deny that the enthusiast version of the smart home is cool and fun. I love that version of it. It's why most of us got into this hobby, but it's also the version that can leave someone you love standing in the dark, trying to wrestle with a wall switch that does nothing, because that's not how the smart home works. The people you live with aren't into your smart home. The answer isn't to demo it harder. The answer is to ask what would actually help them, and then build that quietly and without fanfare. So that one day, 6 months from now, they say, "Oh yeah, the lights are nice now." And that's the highest praise you'll ever get. Because what they're actually saying is, the friction's gone. Every minute you save them is a minute they can spend on something more worthwhile than fighting with your kit. The best smart home is the one that nobody even thinks about. It's not flashy, it's not clever, it just works and makes life a little bit easier. The most successful smart home is one that everyone just forget exists. Now go and ask the people you live with what would actually help them, and then build that. Ta-ra.